Welcome to Ladies Talking Leafs. I'm Chris.
And I'm Sil.
And a quick reminder, just to start off the show, BetOnline continues to be your number one source for all your NHL and basketball wagering needs throughout the year. In-game live betting, contests, and all the best player props. Experience the world's best wagering platform anytime from your desktop or your mobile devices.
Head to BetOnline today to become part of the team and remember to use promo code BELIEVE for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. Currently, BetOnline has an NHL playoff special going on. NHL standings for the wild card spots are pretty tight right now, so go to betonline.ag and get the odds as to who is going to make the playoffs. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know needs support or advice, reach out to Connex Ontario or an organization near you. Place your limits and stay within it.
All right, so it is St. Paddy's Day weekend, and I just wanted to share a bit of an article that Lance Hornby wrote from his Leafs Time Machine articles that he writes once a week, and gives some history. It gave some history of the Toronto St. Pat's hockey team, and he also had an interview with Leafs alumnus Kent Vanderbilt. Some of our listeners may know Kent Vanderbilt or remember him from the 93-94 playoffs. And so he talked about that magical 93 run that we experienced, both Sil and I, and they talked about Pat Burns, who obviously has a Irish family background. And one interesting story from the article, he actually said that Kent Vanderbilt said that they don't really keep in touch that much from that team, like the players, but they did actually get together as a group a few years back. And he said he didn't remember, but he thinks it was Wendell Clark that told him that Pat Burns, of all the teams that Pat Burns coached, the only picture that he had on display in his house was that 93 Leafs team.
Mm.
And that, I got chills from that. I was just like, I couldn't, like, I'm sure, I don't know when this, obviously he has won the Stanley Cup, right? He won it. But to actually only for him to say that had so much meaning to him, basically, that team was something special. It's unfortunate how it ended. We all know, but, so, I just wanted to share that as something that, kind of connected with us.
I think that's interesting that they don't get together. And I don't know. I wonder if it's because it's too painful, maybe, because they were all so close. I mean, like this, I don't know, the stuff they used to do, all the photo shoots and everything. Yeah. The Leafs are the best video, all these things, the passion returns, like all that stuff, you know. Yeah. I just kind of wonder, you know, if maybe that's part of it, because they didn't ultimately, you know, get over that hump. But
yeah, I don't know. It was interesting though. It's a great article. We'll share it in our show notes so the listeners can check it out.
All right. So we're also sending a big thank you to Kristen Myers and Nelson High 69, who got us to hit and go past the 200 subscriber mark on our YouTube channel. So that was a huge milestone for us. And we thank you so much for taking the time to watch us there and subscribing to our show. So we want to thank all of our listeners for watching and listening, of course. So don't forget to hit that follow button wherever you listen to your favorite episodes. Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Ladies Talking Leafs is everywhere, so don't miss an episode. And now it's time to get into the show. We're going to start off with the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the Ladies Talking Leafs highlight reel is going to take a week off because we have another great guest for our third period segment. We welcome Rachel Dory to the show to talk about what the Leafs did or should have done at the deadline and get her thoughts on the Leafs, as we have only about a month to go before the playoffs start. So without any further ado, let's talk Leafs.
All right, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So yeah, it's been off for a few weeks now, but we brought it back here. So for the good, my good is Ilya Samsonov, and it's a lot of good for a lot of people, obviously, with Sammy. He's funny, actually, but just with his injury that he had the other day on or yesterday, I guess, versus the Canes. But he's not injured, thankfully. But yeah, so this just before the Canes game, his stats were he's 13-2-0 with a .914 save percentage. Some people are saying it's because the team has been playing well defensively in front of him, which they have for the most part. But he's been incredible, and just the way he's come back. He also versus Philly on Thursday, he got his 7th straight road win, which ties a Leaf franchise record right now for goaltenders. So that's really impressive. And I watched, I don't know if it was on Hockey Night in Canada last night. It may have been, but Kelly Rudy was saying how he's tracking the puck so much better. Like his focus, he's on right now. And he was saying, like, start the playoffs right now for Ilya Samsonov. So yeah, I'm with him there. And, but yeah, the only worrying thing that I have is that currently all the other playoff teams, basically, they all have basically better goaltending than us. Like when you look at the pairings, like we're pretty far down the line when you compare it to what like the Rangers, Florida, even Tampa. I mean, Tampa is behind us, but no, Sammy's been playing great, and that's all I need to say about that.
So what I would say to your point there about how everyone's saying that all the other playoff teams have better goaltending, all you need to do is look to Florida last year, who just had pretty average goaltending. In fact, Bobrovsky was horrible. So, like you said, now would be a good time to start if we were going to start. But actually, we need Joseph Woll to also, get his game going as well, because we're for sure going to need both of them. But all we need is for him to be on and make the right save at the right time. And really, all the years that we, have not made it past the first round or whatever, our goaltenders always played well. They either let in a bad goal at not a great time, but that wasn't the thing that caused us to lose. So, we, as much as there's so much focus on the goaltending, that's not really going to be our main issue. Like, it's all about getting offense from the people that are being paid for the offense.
Yeah, he just needs to basically our goaltenders just need to be there to make those timely saves.
100%.
That's what we need. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your good?
Like you said, he's looking great now. He made some incredible saves yesterday. Probably kept us ahead for longer because things were starting to break down in the third period there. So, anyway, so for my good, it was really difficult for me to choose somebody because, as you know, things have been okay lately for us, for the team, obviously. But in the last 5 games or so, nothing's really jumped out at me. Nobody's really jumped out at me as playing exceptionally well. So, I was thinking, maybe Bertuzzi, he's been playing well, or John Tavares, like in his new role, he's been playing well, really contributing. And also, there's a few other people, like even Kampf, he's disappeared. He's actually been more noticeable. So, but the person I ultimately went with is the person I called out last show. And I don't know why this always happens, but when I'm ready to call out somebody, they tend to bounce back. And I'm not saying I got any special juju or anything, but I'm going to go with Pontus Holmberg. To the point where he actually even got elevated to the top line with Matthews. We'll get more into that in a little bit, but he's played a lot better since, past the trade deadline and since we had our previous show. And even on that game against Philadelphia, he had 3 points, 3 shots on goal. That's one of the things that I called him out on. He didn't have any shots. He was just kind of, there missing in action, doing the defensive stuff great, but not really contributing. And he's just been a lot more noticeable. Obviously the team's also noticed because they did elevate him, but I just question whether that is the right move with him, because you want him to be able to play to his strengths. And I don't think that that's on the top line necessarily. So I can see kind of what Keefe was thinking about with that, but yeah, leave him where he's comfortable, where he can really do more damage.
I guess it really shows the fact that Mitch Marner is not in the lineup, basically, when it comes to, like, when you compare, basically, because Holmberg, I guess, is the right winger, Bertuzzi's on the left side, right? So it's really, I mean, Pontus
I'm not going
Holmberg's
to
not
say too
Mitch
much
Marner.
about that because I have more to say about that in a few moments.
All right. So let's go on to the bad then. I'm good with Pontus Holmberg, as you're good. And I can understand that you had a difficult time getting a good, because the only real good one really is Samsonov. Right. So, and we need to be different. We don't want to be talking about the same person, right, for our listeners. So, going on to the bad, my bad is the decision to make Benoit a healthy scratch. Sorry. So that healthy scratch. The last 3 games, basically, he's been out, including last night versus the Canes. And I read into this a little bit more to help me feel better about it. Right?
Did it work?
Sort of, but it only works to the point of getting to during the regular season. It's fine. And I understand the point about the 7-game, the right hand shot for Liljegren and putting him in the lineup. And since he is the only one with the right hand shot on our team for D, but, and I guess it's kind of a combination with, I'm comparing Liljegren to Benoit for this. And
but that's not really fair.
No, it's not. But
because they're very different type players, right?
Yeah. But with Liljegren, I mean, apparently it had the fact that he wasn't playing so great just before the deadline, and even a little bit a game or two past the deadline. It's because he was worried about getting traded, apparently. Like that.
Who, Liljegren?
Yes. Yeah. There were some rumors, apparently. I didn't hear it until I started hearing this. I didn't hear about him being possibly be moved, because he is our only right shot defenseman. But anyhow, that apparently plays in it, because last year too, like in the playoffs, he didn't play for us. So he was getting concerned, I guess, that he might get dealt, and that hurts his confidence, obviously, when playing, right? When you don't know your status on the team. But now that he's going back to Benoit, let's go back to him anyways. I just like the fact that he's a physical defenseman, and that's the most important thing you need in the playoffs. I don't think Timothy Liljegren is going to bring all of a sudden change the way he plays to be able to take that physicality in the playoffs. And he doesn't block shots, right? He's not a shot blocker, which is what Benoit does.
He did block some shots yesterday, though.
Yeah, but
I was
not
looking at
to like, not
but
to like.
There's a different type of shot blocking though as well. Like, you know.
But when the game gets physical, I just feel more comfortable having Simon Benoit. The thing that did make me feel that I shouldn't be thinking this way is the fact that technically Liljegren has been here a lot longer, obviously. So you got to give him. Like, I appreciate that Keefe is giving him that extra opportunity, I guess, over Benoit. Benoit just got here like this year, basically, signed as a UFA. And then also Liljegren's going to be an RFA this summer. So that plays into it too. So all these things, they kind of play with it, but I still don't like the fact that he was a healthy scratch, and especially too, obviously, in his home province when he played against Montreal.
For sure. That wasn't necessarily a cool thing to do. But
that was like a Mike Babcock thing.
But I don't think it was. I think people are saying that, but I really don't think so, because the fact that he's still in the lineup shows how much Keefe thinks of him. Because what did his general manager do at the deadline? Went and got some, bigger, more physical guys, right? So the fact that he's still getting ice time, I don't think it's just that he's a right shot D. I think it's because he adds a different dimension, and he has a different skill set.
Yeah, he's more of a he's a puck mover, and he's more offensive minded.
Yeah, for sure. So that's the thing, is you can't have like all the same type of guy playing together. Now, part of the problem is that you've broken up some of the pairs that have been working well, and anyway, that's unfortunate. So like I think that he needs to get a little bit more confidence, probably going into the playoffs, if he's going to play, and maybe they just want to test his mettle a bit. And Benoit probably, they wouldn't sit him out if they didn't think he could handle it, as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, mentally. He's definitely sat out before from what I've read in his previous
yeah. And the thing is, he's really hungry. So once he comes in, do you think he's going to be, half-assing it, or is he going to be hell-bent to show that he should stay? Totally that. The latter, right? So
as long as he doesn't take any penalties.
Yeah, for sure.
Too overly rambunctious, but yeah. So anyway. All right, let's move on to your bad.
Well, this all kind of leads into mine a little bit, because it all comes down to Keefe and how he's using his players, and specifically, I think what he does with them at home, because our home record is not great. I think personally that he overthinks everything. Like, even we were just talking about Holmberg, and you want your players to play to their strengths, and he moves him up to the top line with Matthews. I guess he's looking for more defensive help, getting in on the boards, all of that. But then he only ends up playing 11 minutes.
Right.
And Matthews plays 23. So I don't really know what he's doing. And I actually like that, your point where you're saying it really shows that Mitch Marner is missing. And I think it's because he's overthinking the fact that Mitch Marner is missing.
It's making it louder, basically.
100%. Yeah. Like he's making it way more obvious, because he's thinking of that as such a huge loss, and therefore not trusting the rest of the people in the lineup to just, do a little better in their role. Instead, he's moving people around, not in their role. So,
right. Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. One thing actually that bothered me about what Keefe said after that Canes game, there was a quote. He said, the result sucks for last night, because they obviously gave up the 2-goal lead at the end of the third period there, and then they lost in the shootout. But he said, the result sucks, but we stood in there and we scored 4 goals, and very easily we could have had 3 or 4 more against a team that doesn't give up much. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, but never mind us scoring. What about our defense has the fact that we gave up those goals? We had the 2-goal lead, and we had the lead going into the third too. Like, forget about we could have scored. Like, what about the defensive part of it? Why did they give up that 2-goal lead at the end of the game? Like, that was just brutal. And I thought his decision,
and it was like with only seconds left. That is the thing. So you got to question who he had out there in those moments as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why we posted on X that he should not have had, I don't think personally that he should have had Nylander out there taking the draw on the 6-on-4 when they had the extra man out and they had the penalty.
Willie was 50% on the night, so he was actually having a good night in the face-off circle. But as you said, John Tavares is even better than 50%.
And regardless if JT, I know he's slower or whatever, but as long as he won that draw, most likely he would have just taken that draw and got off, basically. And I would have even had Matthews taking the draw. He was 50-something% too last night, right? Why did it have to be Nylander? Because once they get caught, he's not as good defensively as John Tavares and Austin Matthews. So I don't get why he was there. But anyways.
Yeah.
So that's our bad for Sheldon Keefe. It kind of actually leads, or do you want to
the only last thing I would say is that this concerns me still going into the playoffs, because he just he wants to tinker so much. And if he's swapping out people all the time, there's just no rhythm. There's no flow to their game. So anyway, I hope that he just decides to go with a set group. I don't know. Yeah. I guess that's wishful thinking. It's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, even that
it might be better for us to not have home ice though, then in that regard.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? More road games is better for us probably.
Yeah. Even the new addition, like that DeWar, he's a centerman. He could have taken the draw too. And he's like a penalty killing specialist, right? But yeah. And actually on the topic of penalty killing, that actually goes right into our ugly segment. So yes, the ugly is our penalty kill, and we definitely need to fix this and fix this fast going into the playoffs, because we're 24th in the league in the PK at 76.8%. Last year we were 12th in the league at 81%, almost 82%.
And like at times higher than that too.
Yeah. But at the end we were 12th. So, and when you look at teams, let's say we could play in the playoffs, like the Bruins, let's just say, we've been shorthanded this season 10 times against them, and they've scored three shorthanded goals on us. But I mean, you have to counter that with us on our power play. We've been having issues there too, struggling. But the interesting thing that I read it didn't come to me actually is the change in the coaching, because basically Dean Chenoweth is doing the PK now, as opposed to he used to be in charge of the defense, but now he's more focused on the PK schemes basically and strategies. And they were in this article, which we'll share in the notes, in our show notes. You can check it out. They were just talking about how Mike Van Ryn, like he's now in charge of the defense and I guess positioning the pairings throughout the game as to who plays who during the even strength time. And then Dean Chenoweth does the PK part of it. And he's just not, Dean Chenoweth is more of a defensive minded coach, right? Because that's why he was with the Carolina Hurricanes. And that defensive minded coach doesn't really match the way they called it a power kill here, because we're having, let's say, Mitch Marner on there, or we put Willie on there now. We're trying to like substitute, I guess, we have the defense, but we got that offensive threat there, which that's not really his style. So they're thinking like maybe that message that he's trying to put through to the team for penalty killing is not working, and teams are catching on to it easily, and they're able to get through it quicker. So that was one thing that they said. And they also said that obviously I think TJ Brody has gotten a lot of crap for the last little while, because he's been playing a lot of minutes, which I don't think he should, he needs to be reduced in that way. And he can play on the PK, that's fine, but he's playing right now in the number one unit of the PK, so against the top unit of the other team. So I think that needs to just be flipped and put him on the second unit, come on for the last part of the penalty kill, and maybe that'll help his stats there to be, because he was -2 I think last night, and I think they scored when he was on as well for that last brutal penalty, which wasn't a penalty, but we won't get into that. But yeah, so that's in this article that it's on yardbarker.com. They can it goes much deeper than that, so our listeners can check it out and just to see because they talk about the strategies and the schemes and what kind of players teams put on penalty kills and stuff like that. It's really cool. But there's definitely, and they give their ideas as to how the Leafs can improve it too. So yeah,
well, that's super important, and hopefully the coaches read that article.
Yeah, more importantly, I guess, right? We can read it, the listeners can read it, but
I know that they look at their numbers and they analyze everything. But last year they had a really aggressive penalty kill, and it suited our players. Hanging back is in letting the play come to them. Like that was not their strength last year. They really attacked the players, got them off of their game, didn't let them have so much time to set up. And like, that's why like Mitch Marner had 8 shorthanded goals last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, and we are missing, it was funny. I was watching some of the, what was it? The Pittsburgh-Detroit game, and they were talking about the Leafs for some reason, because I guess we're so popular around the league. And they were just saying, how we lost Kerfoot and obviously Engvall, who also was a penalty kill specialist, let's just say, and then Mikheyev from the year previous, and Noel Achari, who's on Pittsburgh, right? Who he had an effect, even though he was only short time after the deadline last year. But losing those types of players that really helped our PK be better, definitely makes a difference. We haven't been able to find any consistency with the players that we have now. Yeah.
Well, let's hope that some of the new guys that they got, I mean, really, it's only been a couple games, 2 or 3 games, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll, gel a little better, get used to the system, and it'll get better as we get closer. That's the hope, anyways.
It has to get better.
Yeah. So with all of the stuff that we just talked about, we're going to talk a little bit more about a couple of these items and a lot more than that in our third period segment with our guest, Rachel Dory. She is a math whiz and is going to break it all down for us. And I think you're going to like some of the things that she might have to say.
So this is our first show after the trade deadline, and to talk about that and where the Leafs are at with about 16 or 17 games to go in the regular season, we want to welcome to our show one of the hosts of the Staff and Graph podcast, Rachel Dory.
So Rachel worked in the NHL with the New Jersey Devils and Vancouver Canucks as an analyst and video coach, and she's now Chief of Innovation and Development at Bet Analytics. I'm going to say that right. So Rachel is also from Toronto and grew up in Newmarket, Ontario. So we're sure she's a Leaf fan. Anyway, thanks for coming on the show, Rachel.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I mean, Saturday morning, there's a lot of great hockey on today, so might as well just get the day started early and talk about hockey.
100%. That's the way we like to roll around here. So
yeah. All right, so we're going to start off with the Leafs, obviously, and what they did or didn't do at the trade deadline. Personally, I think the team was missing too much to actually fix it all at the deadline. Like, they needed more than just that one piece. But do you think the Leafs are closer to actually being a true contender, that Brad Treliving should have actually gone more all in, I guess, at the deadline, if that was even possible?
Yeah, I think everything's got to be in perspective, right? Calgary was never going to trade Noah Hannafin or Chris Tanev to the Leafs. That was something that came directly from ownership in Calgary. So, I mean, no matter what, you weren't getting those players. So it's you can't really be upset at Brad Treliving for not getting those players, because if the owner of the team that has those players says you're not allowed to trade them to that team, that's just not going to happen. And so you have that. I think it was a disappointing deadline in the sense that, if you're going to go and expend, I think it was 4 draft picks, you're going to go spend all of that capital. Could you at least spend it on something good? That's sort of where I'm at with it, which is I'm good if you're all in, because I think originally I wasn't there because I'm this team's not good enough. Then they had the stretch run where I was okay, they do have it. You need to help them out a little bit. And so I'm okay, if you're going to go in, go in. Don't go in with a bunch of draft picks and not get a single impact player. There were just better ways to use the assets that they had, in my opinion. And from that perspective, it was disappointing.
So do you think you actually called it a nightmare? I watched some of your Staff and Graph podcasts. I'm whoa, it's a nightmare. That's really, but so do you think in the end, because you've worked in the NHL, obviously, so a lot of the media I've heard anyways, they've said those 4 or 5 draft picks that Treliving spent on the Lyubushkin and Edmondson, you couldn't trade 4 or 5 draft picks like that and get Thomas Hertl, for example, or anything like that. That was the big, would other NHL teams actually give up something good for bottom end draft picks? I just don't see that happening. I don't know.
No. And yeah, that's not realistic. But I think the thing about the Thomas Hertl thing that probably should annoy Leaf fans the most is that this kind of happened under the cloak of darkness. I'm pretty plugged in. I know people in the Sharks front office. I know people in Vegas's front office. I know people all over the league, just because you deal with them. And I didn't hear about the Thomas Hertl thing until half an hour before it happened. And that's very unusual because usually when a player of that magnitude is about to be traded or could be traded, you're hearing about it because they're having conversations with multiple teams. Vegas basically went in under the cloak of darkness, which tells me that other teams flat out weren't doing their due diligence, and Toronto's one of them. Now, Toronto was probably about a week, not even. They were about 24 hours from being able to use Mitch Marner's 10 point whatever million dollars in cap space, similar to Mark Stone. So it's just really unfortunate that Marner's injury, one, occurred at all, but two, occurred after the deadline, because with a high ankle sprain, no matter how mild it is, there are players that have missed the rest of seasons with those. Yeah. And so it would have been pretty conceivable to have said, we now have almost $11 million in cap space because Mitch Marner isn't going to be back until probably the first round. Potentially, you never know. He could be back sooner. Yeah. But I think the reality is like, you have to give up high-end prospects. So Thomas Hertl, for example, would have cost the Leafs one of Easton Cowan, Fraser Minten, Nick Robertson, like for sure, without a doubt. If not, like, because they don't have a first-round pick in the year that San Jose wants it, it might have cost them both. Like, it might have been Fraser Minten and Nick Robertson, or Easton Cowan and Nick Robertson. Like, I think that's what you're talking about.
So how much do you think it hurt the Leafs at this deadline, the fact that we didn't have a second rounder at all? Like, that seemed to be, if people weren't wanting to trade a first, a pretty coveted pick for a lot of these deals. And we don't have one of those. We might not have one for a few years. So, how much do you think that hurt us?
Yeah, like, I think, and that's a hard question to answer, just because, like, I'm so jaded, in the sense that, like, I've done my master's in draft analytics, and so I know, like, what a second round pick is worth. And the reality of the situation is, a late first round pick, which is what the Leafs are going to be, basically
is probably around the same. Yeah.
It's pretty much the same value. There's like 5 points extra of value. So I'm like, yeah, this is stupid.
That's like, 100% a really true point that not enough people bring up.
And not even just that, like, if you look at the draft pick value curve, it's an exponential curve, essentially. It's a logarithmic curve. And so if you look at it, a third and a fourth, actually, from a pick value perspective, has more value than 1 second. So the problem you have is that a bunch of people that work in hockey don't understand this, because most of them could barely get through high school math. And so then you have teams like Carolina, who have a guy who has a PhD in chemistry running their strategy, or Seattle, Alexandra Mandrycky, who is also a PhD in analytics, if I'm not mistaken. And you see how they operate, and they're like, yeah, we'll take a third and a fourth instead of a second if you don't have that second round pick available, because it's actually more valuable. And so, I don't know. I just think it's from a hockey man perspective, yeah, not having a second round pick hurt, but anybody with like a half a brain when it comes to mathematics knows that the Leafs actually could have done something. Like, I believe it was like the third and the fifth they gave up for Lyubushkin is equivalent to a second round pick. I don't exactly think they should be giving that up for one of the worst defensemen in the league, but here we are. So yeah, I think it hurt them in the sense that, like, other GMs of other teams think a second round pick is far more valuable than it actually is.
Well, this is why we have you on, to explain these nuances.
One more question about this. Okay. Though. Do you think the Leafs actually, like, the price wise of a player, like, do you think the Leafs actually get screwed over, basically? Like, to say that, like, Tanev, I forget what Dallas got for him, but
they got a second in Grushin.
Yeah, but would the price have been higher for the Leafs to get that player? Like, around the league? Like, do you think that happens?
First of all, Craig Conroy was told he couldn't trade Tanev to the Leafs. Like, was not allowed. So right there, like, you're being handicapped, because, like, what if the Leafs would have offered Easton Cowan? That's better than anything they got from Dallas, right? Not that the Leafs would have done that. I'm just saying, like, you're handicapping your GM by saying you can't do that. There are absolutely instances where the prices are higher. So, like, I know, for example, having worked in New Jersey, we are not allowed to trade a player to the Rangers unless we're getting way more than we should be. And very similar, like, that's why the trade between Ottawa and Toronto a couple years back, the Phaneuf Zaitsev, that Zaitsev trade, that's why that was so different, is because Kyle Dubas is like, I don't give a crap. Like, that's the best deal available for us. Who cares if it's a divisional rival? But then you have, like, in Vancouver, for example, there were a couple teams where our owner was like, you have to fleece them or you can't trade with them. And I'm like, this is such a ridiculous thing to say. Your job is to find the best deal regardless of what team it's with. And if you can't get over that, why do you have a hockey staff? Just run the team yourself. And so, yeah, like the price is naturally higher because teams don't want to see Toronto win. That is absolutely a fact. I've worked in the league, and anyone who wants to tell me otherwise, I mean, like, I have text messages that can prove it. Like,
yeah. Thank you for confirming that.
Yes,
no problem. We kind of knew that, but it's just like wanted to get it straight from someone that's actually worked in the league. So yeah.
Oh yeah, like we had a trade. Like I had a trade that I knew about where it was like, it's X from one team, and then like this is the offer from Toronto, and I'm like, okay, the offer from Toronto is objectively better, and it's like, oh, we can't make that deal though, and I'm like, awesome, yeah, no, this is a great way to run a hockey team.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the playoffs. They're around the corner, so obviously there is increasing attention on who should start game one in the goaltending department. So, as a numbers girl, what do the numbers say about who should get the nod in game one?
The numbers actually say that it doesn't matter. You need to play both goaltenders an appropriate amount, similar to what Boston and who's the other team that does it? I can't think of it off the top of my head. Minnesota. But they may or may not make the playoffs. I'm just pulling up some of the stats in my model right now. Just because I have that at my disposal for whatever.
I was hoping you were going to say Samsonov, but
no. So actually, Samsonov still hasn't, like, yes, he's been excellent of late, but he's really only making the saves he needs to make. He's not doing anything like outside of that. And Joseph Woll, I mean, before he went down with injury, like, he was going to be in the Calder running. Obviously, Bedard's going to win that, but like, he was going to be in that conversation for sure. And so I look at this and I go, you're not having this discussion in Boston. It's just basically like, whose turn is it? Cool, we're going to switch and switch and switch and switch. I think that's exactly what the Leafs need to be doing with Samsonov and Wall. They're both playing really good hockey right now. And the reality of the situation is both of them aren't good when they play too much. And so you kind of have this perfect match made in heaven where when they're both performing well, you don't have to play either of them too much. And I think that's what the Leafs should do. And so I think, yeah, depending on where you are in April, let's say one guy has a leg up, sure, he starts game one. But like, I think I'm of the situation in a 7-game set, it should be 4-3. If you have a hot hand, maybe it's 5-2, but definitely no more than that. Yeah. Like, neither one of these goalies should be playing more than 5 and 7.
Mm-hmm. So looking back, like, Freddie Anderson, we kind of still love Freddie a lot on this show. He got a lot of abuse for letting in just the wrong goal at the wrong time, basically. Played great playoffs here, but just didn't get it done when it counted, or just let in that bad goal. Like, do you think the fact that he played so much, like during the season, he didn't have really a good backup? Do you think that is part of what might have affected him in a moment like that? Like the same sort of thing?
1,000%. Like I did a lot of research when I was in school about the effects of rest, whether it be on injuries or just general play. One of the great examples right now is Thatcher Demko. Like, he played 15 of 17, and now he's got a muscular knee, and like a knee injury that's also muscular. And it's like, well, you shouldn't have ought to played him that much, and he probably wouldn't get injured. He similar to Freddie Anderson, has a history of when he plays fatigue, he gets hurt and he doesn't perform. Okay, well, that just happened. And with Freddie Anderson in Toronto, felt like playing him 60 to 65 games a year was bad.
And sometimes you don't want to listen to the goaltender. He says, "No, I can handle it. Really, I can."
Yeah, or sometimes you are like, oh, we're in this rut. Like, I need you to get us out of it. And it's like, you don't understand that by making that goalie play more, you're actually driving him into the rut further, which is why I really liked what the Leafs did with Samsonov this year, and that he was very clearly in a rut. The guy couldn't stop a beach ball, and they're like, listen, go away for 10 days. Don't go on the ice. Just go away. Go for a walk. Go on vacation. Who cares? Just do your thing. And he came back and he has been absolutely fantastic since. And it's like, wow, it's amazing what happens when you give a goalie a mental and physical reset, what that can do for their play. And so I look at it with Freddie Anderson and I go, had he maybe played 55 games instead of 62 or 63, probably looking at something a little different. And so, yeah, that's something that always needs to be considered.
Yes, we'll never really know for sure, but yeah, that sounds legit
problem
to me.
was Freddie never had the proper backup to support him there, so they didn't really have much of a choice there. All right, let's move on to the defense here. So I'm not a huge fan of Timothy Liljegren right now, anyways, but the last few games, Sheldon Keefe, he's given him the opportunity over Simon Benoit, which that's partly why I'm not really a fan, because I kind of like the rougher, in-your-face kind of style defenseman. My favorite player was Wendell Clark, or still is. But because he's only the right shot defenseman, that's basically why Keefe has put him in there from the sounds of it, and to give him that opportunity. But do you think this is the right move? And if not, where would you see the future of Timothy Liljegren in the Leafs organization? Because they gave away Sandin. Basically, it was an option of trading Liljegren or Sandin last year when they did it, I think. And I'm just wondering about Liljegren. What do you think? He should he be in for game one of the playoffs, or is it better to play Benoit, do you think? Or what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, okay. So first of all, I think that a lot of people have misconceptions about that Sandin trade. The appropriate option would have been to trade neither of them.
Oh,
you did not have to trade for Eric Gustafsson.
I 100% agree with you
do
on that.
Okay.
Right? I think that was it. And the other thing that I think a lot of people didn't realize is, because Washington was down John Carlson, they did not want a right-handed defenseman. They wanted a lefty. And Sandin is the lefty and Liljegren's the righty. And so in that trade that you, again, did not have to make, that was the guy that was going to have to go. And unfortunately, he's the better defenseman. I've liked Liljegren when he's played with Brody. I thought when Riley was suspended, the two of them took that matchup role and they thrived. And
that's
then
the thing,
Morgan,
he played so well for those 6 games, 5-6 games, and then all of a sudden Riley comes back and
yeah. Okay, but this is where I think a lot of the blame is misplaced. He comes back. Why are you touching the D pairings? Put Morgan Riley with somebody else and let Brody and Liljegren continue to develop and play together. Stop messing around with something that works. You figured out that Marner and Matthews work, and now you won't separate them unless there's an injury. You figured out that Brody Liljegren works when Riley was out. Morgan Riley is more than capable of playing with other defensemen. He doesn't need to play with TJ Brody. What are you doing? You had a D pair that worked. Don't change it. Stop. and that pissed me off, because I was like, Sheldon, we've had so many conversations about when I was kind of within the Leafs walls, so many conversations about when to switch things, when not to switch things, and what to go with, what not to go with. And it's like, if it's freaking working, leave it alone. And so the Leafs finally had a top pair that was able to shut teams down effectively, their best players. And then the second Riley came back, he switched it up. And I wanted to I almost texted him being like, what are you doing? And so I'm kind of in a situation where going into the playoffs, I would prefer if it was Brody Liljegren and just freaking leave it. Then you have Benoit McCabe. I really like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, Giordano now is a bit of a different situation. And then you have Riley and whichever one you want to play. I don't care. Probably Edmondson.
Or Edmondson.
The reality of the situation is that Liljegren is a better defenseman than Lyubushkin, and Benoit is a better defenseman than Lyubushkin. Benoit and McCabe have good chemistry together. Leave that pair. Brody and Liljegren have good chemistry together. Leave that pair. That leaves you Morgan Rielly, who's obviously going to play, and you just have to find a partner for him. But, like, to me, when you find 2D pairs that work, stop trying to mess it up for Morgan Rielly. Like, Morgan Rielly's good enough. He can figure it out on his own. And that's what pisses me off. Is like, I think both of them should be in the lineup in the playoffs.
Right, yeah.
Last year, they didn't go with Liljegren at the beginning of the playoffs. And I really felt that I couldn't understand it because at the end of the season, he was playing great. And for them to not trust him, not put him in, like, how much do you think that kind of hampered them?
Oh, I mean, like, first, he's a right-handed puck-moving defenseman that defends in transition well.
Yeah.
I understand why they didn't play him in the playoffs, because it gets a little rougher and angrier, and that's not necessarily his style. But when he keeps the puck out of your defensive zone, you don't need to play rough in front of your net because the puck's not in front of your net. And so that's sort of how I look at it, is I would rather have a defenseman that keeps the puck away from the defensive zone than a guy who's good in the defensive zone. I don't need you to be good in the defensive zone if the puck's not in the defensive zone. And so I think that's where the disconnect is in sort of how I conceptualize hockey versus how a lot of traditional coaches conceptualize. They're like, oh, we need a guy, Joel Edmondson, who cross-checks guys in front of the net. You don't need any cross-checking in front of the net if you simply have defensemen that keep the puck away from the front of the net.
You can't
that's
argue
not always
with that.
possible, but like at the end of the day, if you have Brody, Benoit, McCabe, and Edmondson, then you have 4 defensemen capable of penalty killing, and you don't even need to use Rielly on the penalty kill. So it's like this whole notion that you need to have these guys in the lineup because they penalty kill. No, if you balance your lineup properly, you can have them all in the lineup, and they can all do their job appropriately.
I like the way you think. I can't disagree with any of that, actually. So now we're going to move on to a segment that we call For the Fans Q&A. It's just an opportunity, especially since you're a first-time guest with us, just to get to know you a little bit better, a little bit more about Rachel. So take it away, Chris.
Yeah. This is our favorite first question. It's the easiest one always. Who is your favorite hockey player growing up?
I had a couple.
Okay.
My first favorite was Mike Johnson.
Do you still love Mike? We love Mike on this show.
Yeah, so Mike and I are actually friends now, which is
oh my God,
wild.
That's so wild.
Yeah, we're friends. And so like if you imagine like little me, like 3 years old, and now like I'm 25 years later, I'm actually friends with the guy that was my first favorite hockey player, the reason I loved the Leafs. And so that's really cool for me. And then I would say Matt Sundin, Pavel Datsyuk, Patrick Kane probably were my favorite like players in the sense of like I try to emulate their skill.
Right.
All right. That's
Cool. So did you play hockey growing up?
Yeah, I
You did?
played. So it wasn't my main sport, but I started taking it a little bit more seriously after I retired from like national gymnastics. And so I played pretty seriously from grade 9 onwards.
Cool. All right. So you brought up another sport right there. So we have noticed that you're not just hockey savvy and you seem to follow a lot of other sports. So if you're not watching hockey or if hockey is not your favorite, what are you watching?
Yeah. So hockey is not my favorite anymore. It used to be. That's a totally different discussion.
Yeah.
Soccer. And I'm going to get in trouble for calling it that, but for ease of your listenership, we're going to call it soccer.
Yes.
That is my true love. Like there's no sport I love more than that game.
Okay. So favorite player, favorite team.
So my family's from Munich, so I didn't really have an option growing up. Bayern Munich is the team. I've got all kinds of memorabilia. That's the team. Favorite player, I've got his jersey sitting right there, Bastian Schweinsteiger, from when I was growing up. And then I actually have a couple friends who play professional soccer, so I guess I have to say them.
Good.
That's cool. Wow. All right. So soccer, you like soccer. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, like, I bet a lot. I don't bet on soccer, but I bet a lot. So like, I'll watch NFL Red Zone. I'll watch baseball.
Oh, yeah.
Realistically, like, I watch a ton of sports generally. Like, I don't do binge TV shows. I don't watch movies like my co-host Mike does. He's like a movie aficionado. Whereas like, I'm going directly from this podcast to sit on my couch and watch soccer all day. So
right. Actually, yeah, I don't watch soccer. I'm the reverse. I watch hockey all the time. So I'll be watching like 12:30. It comes on, and I think it's Buffalo and somebody. Anyways, I'll be watching that. But
it's Buffalo, Detroit.
Is it Detroit? I think like it's
big
there's a lot of big divisional games this afternoon. But this morning I saw on the TV there's some big quarterfinal game. I think it was in the English league, like the soccer league.
The FA Cup, and City.
Yeah. So it's just
that's what I'm watching this afternoon.
Oh yeah. That's what I find crazy, the way the fans go on about that. But or the way they react and everything. They were like going crazy.
Okay, so yeah, this is something that is wild. And you guys talk about the Leafs. So this whole notion that it's hard to win in Toronto because of the media drives me nuts, because the media attention and fan scrutiny that you get as in Toronto and in Montreal is harder than the rest of the NHL. But when you compare that to like European soccer or the Yankees, the Red Sox, or the Dallas Cowboys, or anything like that, it is nothing. These people have no idea. No idea. Like, absolutely no idea what it's like to play under pressure. And it's like, yeah, well, like, hockey's not as big. That is actually exactly my point. I don't want to hear that it's difficult to win in Toronto when you go to Munich and like, we're still in the Champions League and our coach, it's already been announced, is leaving at the end of the season because we didn't win our 12th straight championship. Like, you want to talk about hard to win? You got fired mid-season and are told you have to work to the rest of the season because you didn't win the 12th championship in a row. Like, that's the level of pressure we're talking about here. So whenever I hear people in media be like, oh, it's the media and it's the fan pressure, I'm like, these people have no idea what they're talking about.
You're never gonna turn their mind though.
No, they're never gonna understand it, because I'm European, so unless you're European, you don't get it. Like, you just don't.
Yeah. 100% on that.
So another question we had for you is, if you had the choice, would you prefer to just talk about data and numbers, like the analytics side of the game, or would you rather just sit on the couch and watch the game?
I'd just rather watch the game.
Yeah? Oh, okay.
Yeah, like, I think I talk about data for a living, right? That's my job. All right. And I've like having a decent profile now, to the point where like when I'm at the restaurant or the bar, like, and usually I go with like my family or like some close friends who know that like I don't want to talk about analytics and I don't want to break the game down for them while we're trying to like have a drink and watch the game. But like, if I'm sitting at the rail and I'm just trying to like watch the game because I want to get out of my condo, and somebody recognizes me, it's like immediately like, let's break down, or like, I want to have a discussion with you about analytics. And I'm just like, man, I do this all day. Like, I just want to watch the game. Like, and I want to analyze it, because that's where a lot of like, I wasn't always a numbers kid. I watched the game growing up. And like, yeah, I memorized like hockey almanacs and stuff like that. But I actually learned to analyze the game from the eye test first. And so it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I'm better than the average person at math, but like, I'm also better than the average person when it comes to watching the game too. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, I'd just like to relax.
Well, and you should be allowed to do that.
Yeah,
for sure. Anyway, you can catch Rachel on the Staffing Graph podcast and wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, or visit Betalytics. So what can people get from Betalytics if they check out that site?
Yeah, so basically that's where the statistical models live. And so it tells you what you should and shouldn't be looking to bet on, whether it's money lines, game spread. There's NFL, NBA, NHL, and MLB. There will be soccer at some point. But yeah, it basically, if you don't know what to bet on, this gives you, I've seen people just take the bets, but like this gives you kind of like a cheat sheet of like, I need to go look at those trends for that player and this and that. And so it just like cuts the amount of time out that you need to spend researching, because it pretty much populates all the best bets from my model into the world. So yeah.
And no doubt, probably there's some really great resources for people like us who are brand new and want to learn the ropes a little bit. All right. So yes, definitely. And follow Rachel also on Instagram and X, and her handle is at Rachel Dory. So thanks again, Rachel.
Thanks,
and
Rachel.
We hope to talk to you again.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, ladies.
Thanks.
All right. So that was a great conversation with Rachel, talking about the game and hockey data, and in a professional. She's a professional in the industry, basically, and it's something I really appreciate. I'm not a mathematician like her, that's for sure. And yeah, you learned a lot about the numbers in the game, and yeah, I hope we can have her on again. So it'll be great to have her on again.
Yeah, but what really struck me too, though, is that she's not all about the numbers. She really knows the game, and she. You know, people talk about it has to be analytics versus eye test. I think she's got a really good combination of both of those things. Like she definitely has her pulse on things and really notices stuff, you know, as it emerges, and sometimes before other people do, which, you know, may rub some people the wrong way. I don't know, but that's
why she said she prefers watching the game, right? Like when we asked her that question, she prefers watching rather than talking about the numbers and that. So yeah,
she's very bright, and it was just really interesting to talk to her. So I really enjoyed having her on.
All right. So now we're going to do a quick review of the Leafs' upcoming games. Yeah, it's going to be busy now going into this last part of the season. This week we have a back-to-back playing in Philadelphia on Tuesday, and then the Leafs go to Washington to face the Capitals on Wednesday night. And then we have another back-to-back. I didn't realize we had two back-to-backs right away. We have another one.
I think we have a lot because we haven't had too many up to this point. We have a lot in this last stretch.
Yeah, which is maybe not, I don't know if it's good or bad, probably bad. But yeah, so we have our first game at home versus, the first game at home versus Zach Hyman and the Oilers. Not Connor McDavid, Zach Hyman. So that's on Saturday night. And then on Sunday, we play the Hurricanes again on Sunday, the March 23rd in Carolina. So yeah, I think definitely the Philadelphia game is Tortorella is going to be back behind the bench. So I'm sure we're going to have a better outing for a better game from them. And then the Capitals, that we should win that one, but because they're kind of in the playoff hunt still, but they're probably not going to make it. And then of course the Oilers with Hyman and McDavid. That's like the biggest game of the year. Let's just say coming into Toronto, and then the Canes. We'll see what happens back in Carolina again.
And then the following week, pretty much playing every other night. And we knew that was going to happen because with all the time off and trips and everything else. So that's going to be starting off with a couple games at home. Tuesday, March 26th against the Devils, 28th versus the Capitals again. And then they go to Buffalo for a Saturday night tilt on Hockey Night in Canada. And then to start the month of April on the 1st, we are going to be playing the Florida Panthers. So that will be interesting.
Yes, because we haven't played them since November. So
no,
that will be
a while. And with the ramp up, I think that's going to be probably a playoff atmosphere for sure.
Yeah. On a Monday night too. So that'll be interesting. All right. So right now, though, the Leafs are still sitting in third spot in the Atlantic, and they are 8 points behind Florida, who's in second place right now, and 1 point behind the Bruins. That's as of today, Sunday, that we're recording this podcast. And we do have games in hand on both of those teams, but pretty much we're going to be in third place. So, and face one of those teams in the playoffs. Unless we have a total meltdown, we could end up in the first wild card spot. With Tampa currently has that spot and is 7 points behind the Leafs. So I don't know. I don't see that happening, but yeah, so we'll see how it goes. Everybody's going to be watching the standings now. There's a lot of a jam up at the bottom of the Eastern Conference anyways, and the Western Conference as well. So a quick reminder.
It's interesting that like Detroit and Buffalo seem to be
I know.
both making a surge now. So
yeah. And Detroit was losing, but I don't know. We'll see. All right. So a quick reminder that we do love to hear from our listeners, and we'd love it if you could leave us a rating or review and let us know what you think of the show. It's easy on Apple or Spotify, and just leave us a comment on YouTube. It's important for our show to get more exposure as a source for Leafs content, and we thank you for taking the time.
And another way to help us is by visiting our Ko-fi page at Ko-fi.com. You can follow us there, and if you choose to, you can support us by buying us a coffee. Any donation goes towards helping us produce the show and making it even better for you. So you can find the link to our Ko-fi page on our show notes or in any of our social media profile pages.
And thank you, as always, to our healthcare workers and first responders for everything that they do.
We thank you, as always, for listening and watching Ladies Talking Leafs, presented by Bet Online. Until next time, go Leafs, go.
Leafs, go.
Do you believe?